Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the garage for another edition of Andy the Gabby Cabby. Hope everyone's doing okay on this Tuesday. Good to see you all. Now, there's one person that we've not heard from in a little while, and that's really because there's not really a great deal in the way of updates that I could bring you up until this point, and that is, of course, Noel Willcox. Here is a picture of Noel outside the Royal Courts of Justice in London shortly after his hearing or his case was dismissed in there, and effectively a roadblock put in the way. Obviously, that isn't the end of the story, or will become clear very shortly. This was the picture taken off of GB News, and I still haven't forgiven them for getting a picture of me in my shorts in the background, but that's neither here nor there. It was a hot day. At least Howard Cox sat next to me, was dressed more appropriately. Noel has had a bit of a result in that he's had an ally. In fact, it's quite seismic, actually, come to his side, and that ally is Bromley Council. They held a meeting last night where they passed a motion which effectively supported Noel and what he was doing. They discussed in great detail what was happening with regard to TfL, what was happening with regard to Sadiq Khan, and what was happening with regard to those godforsaken ULEZ and LEZ signs. I have a copy of that meeting, and what I've done is cut out the part that's relevant to Noel. It's about 17 minutes long, and what I wanted to do is go through it together with you, and then I can react, fill in the gaps, and bring you up to speed with what's going on. So without further ado, let's get it on the stage and let's get it playing.
Much, Mr. Mayor. I know you've all been waiting for this delight all night just to listen to what I've got to say on ULEZ and ULEZ signs. Mr. Mayor, let me start by saying, if you're on the roads and you're a road user and there's road signs, you expect those signs to be correct. If it says no entry, you expect it to be a no entry sign and not have access through that route. If it says 30 miles an hour, you expect it to be 30 miles an hour and to sort of stick to that speed limit. And you don't expect to see people tearing down the road or likewise going at 10 miles an hour. So I would say, though, that in this case, what we've got is some signs in relation to ULEZ and LEZ that are actually incorrect. Now, there's a procedure that you have to go through, Mr. Mayor, to get a sign. You have to go through the Department of Transport, and you've got to follow a certain process, and it all gets signed off. And eventually the Department of Transport says, yes, this is a standard sign. But if you want a non-standard sign, then that itself also needs approval through the Department of Transport. Now, what happened in the case of the LEZ and ULEZ signs is that TfL and the Mayor for London, of course, put in this request for these special signs. And then guess what? Well, they didn't actually follow the request that they put in for the special signs. I wish it was the only example of TfL not following the rules. They don't seem to follow the rules on anything. So when they not only do they not follow the rules on the signs, but if they want to put a sign up, they don't even bother telling us and giving us a permit to tell us when it's going up. And they're meant to do that. They are being deliberately avoiding giving the public the information that they need so that they know something's coming and they can object to it or do whatever they need to do in respect of the signs being put up. Anyhow, going back to these ULEZ signs, so the fact that they're wrong and they are effectively ultra vires because the signs are wrong, that means that anybody that was caught out by these signs is, of course, actually innocent because the signs are wrong. So if actually someone put up a no entry sign and actually you could go down there, that would be one thing. But in this case, they're not only putting up signs and charging people for it. So they say to you, if you go into this ULEZ zone, you will pay the £12.50 at the moment that it currently is per day But of course, you have no recourse to that. If the sign is wrong, you are not liable to pay that money. And of course, this worries the Mayor of London. It worries TfL, because if they have to pay back all those fines that were gathered illegally, or dare I say, not probably illegal is the wrong word, but wrongly, then actually they will be liable to pay them back, because that money doesn't belong to TfL or to Sadiq Khan. It belongs to the people that paid it in error because the signs were wrong. Now, you're probably thinking, what the hell's he going on about here? So I thought what I'd do, Mr. Mayor, is I bring some examples of, I don't know whether your eyesight's good enough over there. Now, this, Mr. Mayor, is the approved sign, and you can see it's all laid out by the Department of Transport, and there's a little notice at the bottom there that says, at all times. That is what TfL asked for. That is what was approved by the Department of Transport. But hang on a tick. Let's have a look at the signs that are actually there. What is missing? At all times. So they're bound to rights, Mr. Mayor, on this. And I refer to Noel Willcox in this because actually back in 2021, he was driving in and he challenged these signs, and actually he got out the manuals and had a look, and he had a look at this approval and said, hang on a tick, this is not right. And so he took it to an arbitrator who basically said, actually, you are correct. That sign is ultra vires. It is not enforceable. And because it wasn't enforceable, he then tried to get the money back that he'd paid to TfL. And to date, he's never had that money back. He then took that case to a county court to get it clarified that it was still the case, that money was owed to him. And again, it was agreed at a county court that was correct. Can I just say this, and this is how appalling TfL are. At any stage, well, not any stage, but within a certain time limit, they could have taken that decision by the adjudicator to judicial review. But they never did, Mr. Mayor. TfL thought were so cocksure that they were right, they didn't bother. And consequently, the wrong has continued. And I don't know how much I can say, but I know that it's going back to 1 minute left. I know that it's going back to court, Mr. Mayor, and that a decision, again, it is hoped that the decision is made on this sometime in the new year. I mean, I will wind up. I'll probably wind up with the Labour Party already, but I will wind up and say, Mr. Mayor, this is wrong. Support this motion. Let's get people their money back. Let's force TfL to actually recognise the wrong that they've done. And actually, the wrong was done by actually expanding ULEZ in the first place, Mr. Mayor. So on that basis, I propose that we accept this motion and move it forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
So the very first thing to understand about this whole affair, and many of you know already, but this is for the benefit of people that don't. When you drive into an area that has conditions attached, you need to know how big that area is, what the conditions are, if you have to pay anything, how much is it, when you're entering the area, when you're leaving the area, and most importantly of all, how long or what period of a day those conditions apply for. Now, as you saw with the councillor there, he showed you two bits of paper. He showed you the printout of the signs that the Department for Transport should be seeing, the ones that are approved, and you've got the ones that are out, which don't give the information at all times. So the signs that are out are not approved by the Department for Transport. So if you've got unapproved, unlawful signs out there, and TfL are charging people on the basis of incorrect, unlawful, unapproved information, they're in a lot of trouble. And I have separate video footage of Sadiq Khan sitting in a London Assembly meeting, turning around and saying, oh, as far as I'm concerned, the signs are lawful, and just saying you might get the odd one here and there that might have slipped through the net. Not bloody good enough. Not good enough. And as you heard him say just in passing, this is going forward, and there is going to be another case at the beginning of January. And I check my diary, and hopefully I can get on a train and get up there and follow this through as I have done. Now let's move on with this story and see what happens next.
Can I therefore turn, I believe, Councillor Colin Smith to second?
Mr. Mayor, I'm very happy to second and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith? I'm not aware of any amendments that have been circulated on this item, so therefore the item is now open for debate. Would any members wish to speak? The Councillor Kennedy Brooks, please. Councillor McPartman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Although it does rather appear that this motion is out of date. And I'm so shocked to hear Councillor Forthrop being out of date or incorrect. I will happily be corrected, although I guess we'll find out next May whether his residents think he's out of date or not, but let's see. My information has come from Transport for London, Freedom of Information requests, various range of media outlets, including that well-known left-wing outlet, GB News, which I know you like so much. The motion mentions a finding from March 2015. However, on the 3rd of September 2025, Judge Abrahams struck Mr. Willcox's appeal out, saying that it should be subject to a judicial review. Now, if Mr. Willcox had won the case, it would have meant another hearing, which would consider the lawfulness of the signage. And TfL themselves said that the consequences could, as Councillor Forthrop mentioned, result in hundreds of thousands of people receiving refunds for paying to drive in London within the low emission and the ultra low emission zones, and even the suspension of the scheme. However, he didn't win. And TfL have also said that due to a processing error, the correct evidence was not surprised to the adjudicator in time for Mr. Willcox's previous case, but it has been now. Now, whatever people's views are about ULEZ, and I fully appreciate that there are many varying views, the motion is out of date. Judge Abrahams has answered the question raised by this motion for us, and therefore it does rather render it redundant.
I just want to put this picture up where he mentions Judge Abrahams. Judge Abrahams was one of the judges involved in the process. Now, this picture here was after the last hearing. And what Noel wanted was, a good result from his request from what's called a statutory declaration piece of paper that he filed with the court to get that hearing. And it was dismissed. The actual thing was dismissed. And as far as that councillor is concerned, that's the end of the story. Well, it isn't. What they are trying to do, TfL, is try and get this whole thing slung out on procedural terms, a procedural basis. They've turned round and said, it should be going down the route of a judicial review. They've turned around and said that because one of the things that they're trying to point out, and I must say, at no stage has Noel said this himself whatsoever. If Noel is proven to be correct and they find in favour of Noel, again, I might add, then TfL are saying that this is potentially bankruptable territory because they would then have to, on the back of that judgment, refund literally hundreds of thousands of people. So it would finish TfL. That's where they're trying to, muddy the waters. And it's very important to understand as well that this was always a private legal matter. A private citizen, a private businessman going about his business. TfL owe Noel money, a few £1,000, to be quite blunt, a few £1,000, and they don't want to pay it. And this is how it's being, you know, dragged out and pulled down the line as far as it has. There's going to be another hearing at the beginning of January, which will become clear later on in this video. And the story is far from over. The motion is not out of date. It's very much in date. It's very much current. And it's very much relevant to, you know, what's going on. Let's continue.
Thank you very much, members. Any further? Councillor Cook, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've actually been involved in this case, as Simon knows, and the actual current situation is that we are appealing the last decision, because what we tried to do is bring in the ULEZ signs with the LEZ signs, which we actually have proven were unlawful, but they were still expanded down here to Bromley when Sadiq knew that the signage was actually unlawful. So the current situation is on the 2nd of January, myself, Noel Willcox, our Westminster councillor, Layla Cunningham, will be in court for the appeal to progress this further to ensure that the people who have paid fees and fines and have their businesses damaged, their livelihoods taken away from them, their cars taken away from them, these people can get their money back.
So there you go, the 2nd of January. And he said, Noel Willcox, Layla Cunningham, names that are very well known. When the last hearing was over and done with, the judge at the time said, you do have the right of appeal, which has obviously happened. And, you know, this hearing is going to happen on the 2nd of January. It's very important to point out as well, and I want to get this on record, TfL, and again, this isn't Noel, this is TfL, are saying that if they have to pay Noel out, then it's going to cost them millions of pounds having to pay everyone else out. Now, this is where there has to be a separation between the law and the operation of TfL. The consequence of a judgment in Noel's favour shouldn't be any concern of the judiciary. It should be the concern of TfL. It's their problem, not the law. There was a case years ago where an individual had a problem with a council. And the council turned around and said, well, if you find in favour of him, we're finished. It's going to cost us loads of money. You know what the judge said? Let the heavens fall. In other words, what he was saying, not my problem. What you do, how you keep your house in order is your problem. My problem is the law and the interpretation of it. At the end of the day, purely and simply, that is exactly what this has to be about. No more, no less. And all those people that have been done out of all that money. Let's see what happens next.
For Cook, I did see Councillor Kennedy Brooks and then Councillor Marley.
I can't hear this geezer. He's saying a load of stuff, and I think the janitor needs to fix his microphone.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy Brooks. Councillor Marley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just brief remarks from me. I'm delighted that Conservative colleagues are prepared to publicise the work of Mr. Noel Willcox, who was Reform UK's parliamentary candidate for Hemel Hempstead a year ago, and is a leading figure in the party in Hertfordshire. And it shows that Reform are doing everything possible to resist the socialist agenda of our Labour mayor, who got less than 1 in 4 votes in this borough at the last mayoral election, and therefore his legitimacy is questionable at best.
Thank you very much, Councillor Marlowe. I did see Councillor Turrell, or Councillor Thomas Turrell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, I wanted to speak on something bizarre is going on with TfL and signage, because this isn't the only case which is going on. Of course, I know that members from Mottingham and Chislehurst will remind about the current situation with the A20, with the temporary speed limit that was imposed there during 2021 to 22, whereby the wrong signage was installed, with TfL following permanent signage rules for a temporary speed limit, which in turn meant smaller signage, robbing drivers of the protections they're supposed to have about over familiarisation. This has led to tens of thousands of drivers being fined who thought they were going at the correct speed limit. So I'll be supporting this motion this evening because I think we have to shine a light on the fact that TfL has clearly dropped the ball on its signage rules. We have to shine a light on this, and I fear that TfL won't start taking this seriously until money starts leaving their bank account.
That's a very valid point. Speed limits, restrictions, anything have to be authorised correctly so the motorist knows what's going on. If they're not, I mean, you heard him there, TfL has got previous for screwing it up, applying the wrong rules to speed limit signs to the detriment of the normal driver. Say no more. Let's have a look what happens next.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thomas Terrell. I see Councillor Gill. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't planning to speak, but just to respond to Councillor Marlowe, I believe, and the Reform Party might want to check, but in a democracy, the person that gets the most votes wins the election. And requiring a certain majority of votes across in particular boroughs is not the electoral system that I think it was the Conservative Party introduced. So I'm not quite sure how you're arguing that somebody who wins a democratic election doesn't have a mandate because they don't want to win a particular area. And if you are, then I guess that means the Conservatives don't have a mandate because they didn't win in Penge. So that logic, I'm sorry, doesn't quite carry through, I don't think. I'd also like to just highlight for some of the Conservatives opposite, if they are taking this approach about signage and incorrect signage, meaning the repayment of all signs, there are a number of schemes in Bromley where there are not signs. Dog fouling, there are other signs about alcohol, public alcohol, where there are not signs. And I just excuse me for members of the public, but those are not TfL signs, they are Bromley Council signs, or the lack of signs. And so if Bromley Council is passing this motion, I would ask whether the portfolio holders are going to take the same approach for all fines that are being issued for dog fouling and other matters where there are no signs and residents have contested. So I would say, if you're taking this approach, will you be consistent with it?
I just want to comment, and it's not strictly on subject here because we're talking about ULEZ, but this individual with the rainbow coloured tie and the funny looking glasses who stood up turned around and said about not having a mandate. They won the election, so they have a mandate. What these individuals don't realise is that our democracy is in trouble, because when somebody wins an election, be it by 30%, 40%, whatever it happens to be, that is a percentage of the people that turn up and vote. That doesn't necessarily follow that that is a percentage of the population of the area, in this case, London. So a lot of people could stay indoors. A lot of people could think, sod this, what's the point, and not vote. So then you could have a high percentage of a very small turnout and you win an election. And then 3/4 of Londoners stayed at home. So in effect, with the majority of Londoners, he probably doesn't have a mandate at all, albeit an official one. That's what he was getting at. And as for talk about dog fouling and all the rest of it, that's, surely an area-specific issue. This is a matter of national importance, really. National importance. And it affects not only Bromley, but the whole of London. In fact, the whole of the country, because who was driven into London? Who has been affected by this?
Very much, Councillor Gill. See no further hands on the item, so therefore, Councillor Smith, please. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is about doing the right thing, isn't it? It's about being seen to do the right thing without rehashing, regaling the whole history of ULEZ. Outer London has been well and truly done unto, let's keep it polite, there's members of the public and ladies present, absolutely done unto with this scheme that was poorly designed, thrust on us under false pretences, and has basically changed community groups, forced people to change jobs, forced people to change cars. It's changed a lot of people's lives for the worse, for absolutely no sum gain in terms of the cleanliness or otherwise of the air. If it was about air, he would have started in his tube network. That's the filthiest air in London. If he was serious about clean air, that would be the go-to place. But moving on, we lost. We took it to court. We came up short. I think that's a great shame. It's done a lot of Bromleyans, a whole bunch of damage. But that's the law. We lost. So we have to suck it up, to quote a certain phrase from another council not so long ago. But having done so, we have found the TfL are clearly at fault. They've made a mistake. The very least any politician should do when they make a mistake is say sorry and rectify it. And that's why I support this motion. I think people that have been sent tickets under false pretences based on signs that frankly aren't legal should get their money back. And that's why I'd encourage everybody, please, to support this motion tonight. Mr. Mayor.
I think that's a very good explanation, the effect this whole scheme has had on Londoners as a whole. You know, I when the ULEZ first expanded, I received emails from people, including, you know, one example that always sticks to my mind. There was an older person who needed their car to get out and about and, you know, retired. Naturally, money's tight because our pensioners aren't treated as well as other countries. And they relied on their car to nip down the road to get the paper, get a pint of milk and, you know, get out and about a little bit. But then all of a sudden, £12.50 just to pull off their driveway every time. It's little stories like that. You think, this is so wrong. I monitored the air quality. There's sites all over the place. You monitored the air quality. And what you were being told and the facts of the matter were inconsistent. I know people, Howard Cox being one, that went all around everywhere with an air quality meter. And generally speaking, more often than not, the air quality was worse on the underground than it was on street level. Time after time after time. You know, what else can you say?
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. I see no further hands, so I shall go to Councillor Forthrop for the right of reply, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Mayor. I'll be fairly brief because I think most of it's been said. Councillor Cook is quite right. This isn't over yet. It is. There was a court date where it's actually being appealed for various reasons, and you know, so far the issue of whether the signs are legal or unlawful has not actually ever been addressed. As I said, TfL could have addressed that way back in 2021 with a judicial review of their own. They never did it. So the fact that they're trying to, they must be desperate for an appeal now because they actually want to prove their case. We'll find out whether that happens in due course. But I will say this to Councillor Marlowe, who was going on about reform this and reform the other. Well, actually, you're a reform councillor. Why didn't you bring forward this motion? Why did you have to rely on Conservatives to do it? Because Conservatives deliver where reform can't, I'm afraid. So, you know, there is an element of that to it. And of course, we should always try and be consistent. But as Councillor Smith said, what this is about is doing the right things by the residents in our borough in particular. Because our borough is the one that was most impacted by ULEZ and by the signs that went with it. And I'm proud to be doing what's right by our borough, Mr. Mayor, and I'll continue. And I hope members will continue and support this motion going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Forthrop. We will now move to the vote on the motion. So can I please have those in favour of the motion? Thank you very much. And can I please have those against the motion? Thank you. And can I have those abstaining on the motion? Thank you. I declare that motion to be carried.
Motion carried. that basically means that an entire borough council supports Noel Willcox in his fight against the ULEZ signs. That is pretty seismic, actually, pretty seismic indeed, and a great result. Now, you hear all the party political sniping and everything, and to be honest, it bores the hell out of me. But the main thing is, the majority of those councillors, bar two, spoke a lot of sense. At the end of the day, the signs aren't authorised. The signs aren't legal. There's ample proof of this. They're trying to bury Noel with procedural difficulties. They're trying to bury Noel by saying there should be a judicial review because of the overwhelming consequences if it was found in his favour. And again, just to be absolutely crystal clear, at no stage did Noel say any of this. This is a private legal matter which has been blown out of proportion because of the consequences, all of this, evidence, all of this administrative error, all of this judicial, it's all coming from their direction. I've seen this with the election petition trial in Chester, where they try and use all the legal tricks, all the procedural, all the CPR, to try and bury something from a member of the public, a litigant in person, that they don't want to happen because of the consequences. And it's about time that people all over the place acknowledged and learnt what their rights are, what the laws are, what you are allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, because access to justice is very, very, very difficult and very, very hard to come by in this day and age. So where we are now, beginning of January, we're there again. We continue. We have the support of Bromley. So many people on this channel are behind Noel. So many people donated to that GoFundMe in the first place when all this started. And I followed this from the beginning. And we go forward. And sooner or later, we will get an outcome. We will get an outcome. Thanks for watching, everybody. That's as up to date as I can get you. Please hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel for this and news on other things, including my own fight with my own council. Share my stuff. And as always, I look forward to talking to you soon.